Welcome. On February the 18th, Saturn and Neptune come together in their first exact conjunction for 37 years. This time Aries, last time Capricorn. Saturn rules Capricorn. It's the sign of physical culmination. This time we're at the very beginning of the whole zodiacal journey, and that has an incredibly powerful symbolism because Saturn takes 29 and a half years to go through the sky, and Neptune 165 years to go through the sky. So this alliance is so incredibly rare. But on the vernal point, as they are in Aries, that really is freshness, new beginnings. The sign of Aries is very much about drive, passion, assertion, enthusiasm coming from its sole domiciliary ruler of Mars. Saturn, on the other hand, is in its fall in this zodiac sign, and therefore not at its best at all, because Saturn is about outcomes and consequences. Neptune is the higher octave ruler of the sign of Pisces, which has just finished its journey through, which first began in 211, but full time since 212, apart from those 6 months last year. And of course, for 3 months and 1 week of last year, they were just under 2 degrees, shimmering together. And we did therefore start to see the first manifestation of their energy as a duo. So this exact conjunction, right at the beginning of the whole zodiacal story, also brings a chapter to a close. And that's the big celestial irony. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundel. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to unpack this for you, what it means for us individually, collectively, but also for the global world stage. Please stay with me as I go through this. I'm going to share with you, first of all, the zodiacal event chart, and that looks at the overall zodiac, like we're talking about the beginning of a new journey. But I'm also going to share with you the event chart based on the prime meridian and universal central time. The reason for that is it gives us a reference point that we can all collectively relate to wherever we are in the world, but it does put the exact time of the conjunction much more sharply into focus. So if you like, it's the natal chart of the event beyond just talking about Saturn and Neptune in a conjunction in Aries. We need to drill into the detail to really get an understanding of what we can expect, particularly over the next 2 years, while Saturn remains in the sign of Aries through to April 2028. So on the screen is that zodiacal event chart. And you can see there they are at 0 degrees and 45 minutes. Now, there's another thing to tell you about the vernal point, the beginning of the overall zodiac, which we will have a revisit from the sun on the 20th of March with the spring equinox. And that's a wonderful moment always. However, at 0 degrees and 45, this duo are in the first 2.5 degrees of the sign of Aries, which is the first Dward. Dward is where we divide each 30 degrees of a zodiac sign by 12th. It's called the 12th harmonic, and we get 2.5 degree slots. So they're coming together in a part of Aries, which has a double Aries manifestation. So very much about the thrust that comes from Mars, the ruler. But of course, Saturn can resist. It's about structures. And because it's about those outcomes and consequences that we saw 37 years ago with the Berlin Wall coming down, the conflict in Bosnia, which was incredibly cruel, but also the events in Tiananmen Square, a very desperately sad day as well. We can't just think of Saturn and Neptune as a new beginning and think that things will automatically be positive. There's lots of different facets we do need to consider. But the energy of Aries does create the perception of hope. And it can, of course, be somewhat innocent. But the planet Saturn is about wisdom, experience. And that's why it likes us to just pause a little bit. So over the next 2 years, when it comes to our physical well-being, particularly as Chiron begins this new journey in the sign of Aries, where it's been full time since February 2019, asking us to work on our identity. So our identity could come under pressure, but so could our physical well-being. So we do need to really look after ourselves. So the Pisces years, particularly with Neptune, has seen a real explosion of escapism, whether it is through alcohol, whether it is through drugs, whether it is through an oversharing of situations. Maybe there has been a compassion overload. That doesn't mean to say that compassion doesn't remain incredibly important, because what happened last year with the first blush from the 25th of March through to the 1st of September, Neptune moved into Aries on the 30th of March, Saturn the 25th of May. That shimmering just under 2 degrees conjunction between them, we did see some very muscular, harsh, and in my humble opinion, nasty uses of power. And of course, Saturn can be the cold hammer that comes down on our reality. So our reality went from the uncertainty of the Piscean years, when a lot of distortion, particularly around media, information, facts, have just been absolutely dissipated. And Neptune has, of course, great strengths in terms of that healing, in terms of compassion, in terms of psychic potential, but it can create an uncertainty about who we are. So we have seen some shape shifting around the whole concept of identity. Some people wanted to push back, take us back in time, other people pushing back on that. And Neptune in the sign of Aries gives us a chance to be much more passionate about our idealism. But we're going to have to fight for some of the advances, particularly in terms of human rights, that have been achieved over recent years, because some people want to bring a much more simple, harsher, and rugged, and frankly, much more masculine vibe to bear. They're not doing it because they care about people. They care about power. So we need to know that this combination does have its challenges, and we saw those challenges last year, but we've also seen more recently people finding their voices, particularly with Neptune in an amazing link, a sextile with Pluto. Now, Saturn will reach that sextile with Pluto late in March, and that can be very helpful. We also need to be conscious of where Mars is, the ruler of the sign of Aries, and it is in a square with Uranus. And the last week of February, they come into an exact right angle in an incredibly acerbic and abrasive way. If we go right back to when Uranus first moved into Taurus, the event chart, in the middle of May 2018, Mars was in a square on the last degree of Capricorn. It then went into Aquarius whilst Uranus had that first visit to Taurus, went into a retrograde. So they were agitating against each other for pretty well the whole time of that first blush of Uranus's first visit. So the potential for more warlike activity towards the end of February is very, very strong. But also because of the human rights appreciation that Mars has in the sign of Aquarius, and because the sign of Taurus can be values, Uranus is the higher octave ruler of Aquarius, we are going to see people pushing back about the unfairnesses, the distortion around that truth, the lack of candor, because the sign of Aquarius really seeks that honesty. It wants the higher truth. That's what Uranus is about. And we're going to see a speeding up of the communicational elements and influence of Uranus once he returns back into Gemini, where he briefly visited last year for 4 months on the 26th of April. But in this particular event chart, we can see over the next 2 years inspired leadership. We can see people showing greater courage in terms of expressing their moral conviction. We can see something building up from what hasn't been working very well. We can see long-held visions, Neptune, be eroded but be replaced by something much better. We can show more discipline about compassion. So compassion can't be just ladled out. It also has to be earned by people having respect for what they do for themselves. Now, of course, there is a shadow side. There can be confusion with Neptune. We can see that authoritarianism. We can be guided by illusions or misinformation, unfortunately. We can also become very disillusioned with governments, big business, for sure. And also because of the first house being about the body, we can see burnout if we try too hard. But remember, Saturn brings boundaries, it brings discipline, and it brings accountability. And Neptune can also give us that push to embrace what really is positive about person kind. And the sign of Aries is very much about being the pioneer. It is about a new beginning coming, but we're going to have to fight for it. Now, on the world stage, because we know what happened with the Berlin Wall, the last time this happened, and the sign of Capricorn is very much about structures. Are we going to see physical structures come down this time? Well, when I show you the event chart, we can get a much greater idea of where the activity will occur. But that's the metaphor for the chart. Intriguingly, there is a lovely link between the two benefics, Venus and Jupiter, and there is a mutual receptivity. Jupiter, the traditional ruler of the sign of Pisces. And therefore, if we do understand that kindness, decency, caring for one another are still very laudable ambitions to have, even if we do have technology, we do have new ways of connecting. It is important to retain that more emotional dimension, and therefore the fire sign of Aries does usher in a new beginning. But we did last year, particularly for those 3 months and 1 week, get a quite unpleasant taste of this aspect, and now we may start to see a pushback as people really understand just what's being used to manipulate information in particular, very Neptunian. So on the screen, this is the event chart from a natal viewpoint, and Saturn and Neptune are in the 8th house. The 8th house can be about shared resources, can be about long-term finances, it can be about secrets. And of course, the Epstein files is a classic example of secrets slowly but surely being teased out, as much as the government in America is trying to withhold that information. But just be aware that Uranus is right at the top of the chart. So for us all collectively, I think we do continue over the next 2 years to be in uncertain times. That's just being really truthful. We do have a square between the Moon and Jupiter in the exact event chart. That's interesting. We may try some things, we may be more experimental, it may not always work out. But having the Sun, the North Node, and critically Venus in the 7th house, if we can work on our relationships by using the discipline of Saturn, but also the atmospheric appreciation of Neptune, that's something that can be a very positive thing. To understand how this will play out for your zodiac sign over the next 2 years, please click on the link on the video within the screen, and you can watch your deep dive for each of the 12 zodiac signs. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundel. Thank you for joining me. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now.